Welcome back for another video. So we've got a record number of teams that have signed up for FPL on the opening day, shaping up to be the toughest season ever. To help you build your team, this video's got 15 players to avoid for various reasons, and if you've got any others or thoughts on these players, leave a comment below. Fantasy Football Scout are doing a crazy 40% discount on all memberships right now for the 24-25 season. I've been a member for 7 years now, and I used them for 5 years before I'd even made an FPL video before. You get all the members' tools like fixture ticker, team planner, comparison tools, and unmissable members only content. s.id/fplfocal to become a member, which supports the channel as well. Link below this video as well to become a member. Let's get into it. First up is Trippier, which might be an unpopular one. He's in 17% of teams. Trippier was unrecognisable in the second half of last season. He made a lot of mistakes and he cost Newcastle several goals. He didn't have a great showing at the Euros either, albeit he was shoehorned in left wing back, so we'll give him that one. Newcastle's defence also looked unrecognisable last season, which wasn't helped by tons of injuries. Personally, I'd rather consider someone cheaper like Burn for 4.5 mil if you want to buy into the Newcastle defence. But besides those points, the likes of Saliba, Gabriel and Vardy all look much better value for the same price as Trippier. Next up, Ederson. 5.5 mil, he's not lived up to that price tag in years. There's no reason not to find the extra 0.5 mil for Vardy if you want away into the City defence. He's got way more upside. And there's rumours that Ederson could be leaving City in this window anyway, which may or may not happen. If that happens, the same applies to Ortega, who's also 5.5 mil. Ederson's always been a troll in FPL. Thinking out loud, it's probably in part City's style of play. They are an elite defence, but in most games there's always a moment or two where opponents get a big chance and often score. So Ederson often conceded a single goal in games last season, which isn't worth anything besides 2 points. Raya's a way better pick for the same price as Ederson, it's not even close. For old time's sake, we've got to include Dina, who's one of the most infamous FPL trolls of all time, but this also applies to Alex Moreno. They're both 4.5 mil, however Villa have just signed Maatsen, who played exclusively in left back for Dortmund last season, so avoid Dina and avoid Alex Moreno. While we're talking Villa, Diaby's an avoid as well. Quality player, and his numbers actually looked really good last season with 6 goals and 11 assists. He's too much of a rotation risk though. Bailey was often favoured him last season, and he started in 25 of the 38 games. When he started, he nearly always came off early as well. Players that get 90 minutes most games is a good trait in FPL. The longer a player's on the pitch for you, the better chance they have for returning for you in a nutshell. No forward for 6 mil or less has more points than Visser's 131 last season, and 12 goals was by far his best scoring season, but he's an avoid still. He got plenty of minutes when Tony was suspended for the first half of last season, but he's going to be rotated a lot now. Unless they sell Tony of course, then all bets are off in terms of his prospects. A controversial one to wrap up page 1 with, Nkunku. He was injured multiple times last season, and we're still yet to see him at top level. Don't get me wrong, it's a very tempting price point at 6.5 mil, and he could be a game breaker if he can put up his Bundesliga numbers. Personally, I'd like to see him start well first, so for me he's on the watch list initially, and then I'll buy him later if he does well. It's Man City and Gemic 1 as well, which is about as tough as fixtures come. If he completely tears it up in pre-season, then he will be one to consider. Which reminds me, by the way, I will be doing a weekly pre-season update video soon. All the form players, who scored and assisted the most, any observations, etc. So subscribe so you don't miss out on that. Some more players that could be unpopular here. It's the Liverpool attackers, Gakpo, Jota, Darwin and Diaz. All priced well at 7.5 mil, but it's 4 players competing for 2 spots. Is this the end of Pep Roulette and the start of the slot machine? Referring back to the earlier point, even if they do start, there's a strong likelihood of coming off early, as the other attackers are too quality to leave on the bench. Gakpo was top class in the Euros, one of the best players in my eyes, and he's one I'm keeping an eye on in particular. It's a tough one because Liverpool have got the best opening fixtures of any team. For me it's Trent and Salah that are worth a go. Quansah's one to keep an eye on as well. He's quite an under the radar pick, 0.7% owned, 4.5 mil, but here's a rotation risk with Konate. That said, unless Liverpool sign a centre back, we're one Konate injury away from a 4.5 mil route into Liverpool's defence. Next up's Rashford. After a poor 21-22 season, he came in at 6.5 mil the next season, and he actually tore it up, 17 goals, 7 assists. And then he followed that up again with a poor 23-24 season. He's got a point to prove for both club and country, and he could certainly get back to the form of a couple of years ago, but 7 mil's quite steep for such poor output. 3.3 points per match last season, which was the same as the likes of Elanga and Barkley. Back to Chelsea, it's James and Chilwell. Shocking injury record, James in particular, and he's suspended for the first 3 games after picking up a red card back in Gemic 38 last season. 5 mil is a very tempting price, and I'm sure a lot of us will go there at some point, but I do worry he'll never get over the injury issues. We might even see Cucurella and Gusto as the favoured fullbacks next season, who both have very good availability in general. Gusto was impressive last season, and Cucurella had a good Euros. Next up is more of a general tip on not wasting a spot from a top team on your bench. For example, don't waste an Arsenal spot on Ramsdale to bench him, or Rico Lewis for City, etc. There's every chance you're going to want to have 3 players from these teams in your starting 11, and you'll be wasting transfers later on to remove one. Imagine going into Game Week 1 with Lewis, Vardy and Foden, and then Haaland becomes practically a must-have. You're screwed, as you're going to need at least 2 transfers to take one out and then bring Haaland in, plus find the money for it. On the subject of City, all of Walker, Akanji, Ake Stones, Ruben Diaz and Cancelo coming at 5.5 mil, and they're all avoids. They're all much lower ceiling than Vardy, who plays like a left winger and he shoots with way more regularity, so avoid them and try and find the extra 0.5 mil for Vardy, it'll be worth it. Mainoo's over 7% owned, 5.5 mil. Just a 3 goals last season, he's a low ceiling player due to his role in the team, avoid Mainoo. Hudson-Odoi and Andreas are 5.5 mil as well, and they'll probably score more points, but not the most exciting picks. Even Harry Winks could score similar to Mainoo, who's only 4.5 mil for Leicester. He made 45 appearances last season, he scored 2 times. Not one to buy and actually start in your team every week though, he's one for 2nd or 3rd on your bench. Finishing with a couple of cheap players that I've taken out of my team at the moment because their ownership's uncomfortably high. Last season I made the mistake of having Mubama as a 4.5 mil forward on the bench, hoping he gets some minutes at some point, and it never happened. And because of his high ownership, he dropped to 4.2 mil after a few weeks by the time I actually had a chance to sell him. So I'm making a conscious effort to minimise exposure to price falls, as I took a beating in the early weeks last season and it took a while to recover the lost value. So Turner's the 2nd most owned keeper in the game and by far the most owned 4 mil keeper. Given it's incredibly unlikely he gets minutes, I'm looking to pivot my keepers to another 4.5 mil and 4 mil pairing. For example, Flecken and Valdimarsson, or Areola and Fabianski, or just swap Turner for another 4 mil keeper. It is handy to have a 4.5 mil keeper and their 4 mil backup, because then if your keeper gets injured, you're still guaranteed a starting keeper, because their backup will play. Anyway, in Turner's case, also going to need some clarification on the keeper situation, as Forest have signed Carlos Miguel, who's just been added to the game at 4.5 mil, so there's 3 keepers there now. And finally, Harwood Bellis, by far the most owned 4 mil defender in the game, and a possible avoid for the ownership reasons like before. He's probably the most owned because he was the first 4 mil defender they revealed, so he's the one everyone remembers. I'm going to be doing a video on all the 4 mil defenders and the best enablers elsewhere in the game. Bednarek, for example, is 4 mil, and he also plays for Southampton, and he started 39 games last season, yet he's 1.9% owned. Or there's Fask, Greaves and Johnson for Ipswich, who are all 4 mil, etc. These are all very low ceiling players to go deep on the bench, so I'm going to be looking towards those with lower ownership but an equal ceiling. I'll read every comment, so drop one below if this was helpful, and as always hit like to support the channel. See you soon for the next one.